Hello, listeners. Welcome to season 2 of the Masters Decoded podcast. I am Manish Merchant, the chief decoder. I want to thank you for the overwhelming response to season 1. Your feedback and encouragement led me to bring you season 2 of the Masters Decoded. The season will tap into how technology, artificial intelligence, and other socio-economic factors have impacted my guests' careers or passions. My next guest on today's podcast is Niket Karajagi. Niket is a mechanical engineer, a postgraduate in international business management, author, Tech-Educator, podcaster, blogger, ICF accredited business coach, and an organization development facilitator. He has over 25,000 hours of consulting and training experience while having contributed to over 175 organizations worldwide. He has trained and coached well over 200,000 leaders and managers globally in various behavioral and management areas. I had an absolute pleasure of having him on this show. So without much further ado, let me get on with it. Hi, Niket. Welcome to Masters Decoded podcast series. Really glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
Before we continue, a small word from our sponsors, Anchor.fm.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Nikhil, when I was looking up, your company name, Atyasa, is a very interesting and intriguing name. For the benefit of the listeners today, do you want to give a little bit background about why Atyasa, what is the meaning of Atyasa, and what does Atyasa focus on?
Certainly. My life is all about coincidences. And not only my career is a coincidence, my profession is a coincidence, even the name of the company is a coincidence. So you take me back to the years when I had just about quit my job. It was 2 days or 3 days when I had quit my job. And I was toying on the idea as to what name do I give, because I was very clear I'm going to build a brand. I didn't want to have a small time setup. And fortunately, at that point in time, there were some Vedic scholars who had come home for dinner. And they were into transcription of the Vedic literature.
Wow.
And they were techie guys also. So we started chatting, and then they realized I'm getting into behavioral stuff, and we engaged with the conversation. And then one of them said, "Hey, is it okay if we give you the name of the company which suits this conversation?" And in any case, I was looking up at building an Indian brand. I didn't want to pick up the cliched management brand names. So I said, yeah, I'm perfectly fine. The next day, they came back to me and they said, you told us that you want people to face the truth. You want them to transcend to the space of reality. And here is the name Atyasa, which you will never find anywhere, because this name is so unique that it is all about transcendence. It's transcending to the absolute truth. I loved it. So earlier it was spelled as Atyasa. But then it started getting misinterpreted. Some people started saying, okay, it looks like Atyasa, which is excess desire. And I don't have a problem with that. I believe humanity must have excess desires. That's when you accomplish stuff. So I didn't have much of a problem there. But I wanted people to, kind of use it the way it is supposed to be used, pronounce the way it is supposed to be pronounced. So we added a couple of A's to that. So a lot of people ask me, is it about numerology? And I tell them, no, it's not about numerology. It's actually about the way I would love this brand to be pronounced. So it's Atyasa, which basically means transcending to the truth, and that to the absolute truth. And that's the ethos of the work that we are in. So that's Atyasa.
So building on further on this, so what does Atyasa really do? So when you say transcending to the ultimate truth, do you do coaching? Do you mentor people? And truth is a hard fact, and it's
sometimes not good or bad, right? And people to accept the hard reality, right? The ultimate reality, like you said, it takes a lot. And to do that, you have to go and make them through a coaching program. You can't just do and say something and people will believe in it. I don't know if
Yeah, I
I'm
got
saying
it.
that.
Yeah, I got it, Anis. So, Anis, there are two facets to my life, which is true for anybody. One facet is my own personal facet.
Mhm.
I'm a seeker there.
Yeah.
Okay, I have done a whole lot of experiences in life which are getting into the realm of absolute mysteries of life.
Hmm.
Okay, so that part also is true to me, but I don't engage that in my corporate life. But I
Hmm.
believe if you are a person who is into transformation of organizations, transformations of leadership, it's important for you as an individual also to be in the journey, which is an inner journey.
Hmm.
Okay, so I am in that journey for sure. The second part, which is my commercial part, is about engaging with people, and I specialize in behavioral modifications.
Okay.
So, what I tend to do is I tend to conduct researches in organizations to find out which are those success behaviors which are required for the current stage that they're in and the orbit that they want to get into.
Hmm.
And I'm a researcher, so I use absolute research methodologies to get into that. I don't do anything which is not valid and not reliable. Correct. Now, while there is an organization's competency framework or the behavioral framework that we talk about, it's also important that leaders get aligned to that. Therefore, certain modifications of behaviors are required in people also, for which I use a lot of psychometric tools depending on whatever is the behavioral modification that has to be targeted. I pick up an instrument based on that. And then there are these valid and reliable tools which I use, instruments that I use. And then which are the behaviors which are interfering and which are the behaviors that need to be modified is what I work on. Though at an individual level, I can also get into deep work on personality. I am an ardent practitioner of the Jungian philosophy. I love Carl Jung's work, and I do a lot of work around MBTI, which goes deep into your personality DNA also. And
Hmm.
then I kind of look at the person, but that's nothing to do with the organization behavior. That's about allowing an individual to understand or experience his or her personality and then allow it to kind of reach the state of abundance. That's the whole idea of the MBTI process that I do. It's called bespoke coaching. And at that point in time, I identify which are those out of preference behaviors that the instrument is giving, and then give people remedies as to how they can go closer to their personality. And when we go closer to a personality, we are bound to succeed.
Hmm.
One part is the trait part where I get into behavioral modifications, which has nothing to do with personality. The second part is getting in to an individual's essence and then looking at what are the out of preference behaviors that a person may have inculcated in this stage of the upbringing. So that's typically the work that I do: transformation of businesses, transformation of behaviors. And the target is very simple: everybody's got to be profitable in life.
Very interesting. Uh, you know, I've been through a coaching program myself and I have seen a lot of changes. So I know people who go through this entire process, I'm sure they will be reaping the benefits of, this entire uh, state of transition, which happens in their mind, in their behaviors, and in their personality, depending upon how they take it.
So, Anit, I only work on behaviors.
Okay.
I don't get into the realm of the mind.
Okay.
Okay, because when I was reading up Gautam Buddha's work, and by the way,
Hmm.
Gautam Buddha I consider to be one of the most fascinating behavioral scientists that has ever happened on this planet.
Hmm.
And if you look at Gautam Buddha's work, he only talks about modifications of behaviors.
Very interesting.
And then what he says is that once you modify your behaviors, your mind is linked to it, the mind will automatically go through transformation process.
Hmm.
And I picked up the whole essence of my work from there. So I'm also a Zen practitioner, and in Zen, there are a lot of koans, puzzles, poems, which are all about behaviors ultimately, but they take you very deep into your journey of inner transformation. But the fascinating logic is if you look at transformation of the inner journey first,
Hmm.
yes, it is intellectually and spiritually very gratifying.
Hmm.
But behavioral modifications, because behaviors are our habits,
Yep.
And to break the habits and to start a new habit is a major challenge. So we're looking at not only things from the intellectual perspective, but we are also looking at it from the application perspective by identifying the exact behavior and
Mhm.
just one or two behaviors. We don't look at multiple behaviors. One or two behaviors that can actually shift the orbit of success is what we look at.
Very, very impressive. Before we started this recording, you mentioned about that you work with only top 3% of the of your target market.
Yeah.
Now, this top 3%, I'm sure, will be executives, senior individuals, or people who are looking to become and do big things in life, right? Uh,
Not actually, Anis.
no? Okay.
No. There are people across the pyramid.
Hmm.
Okay, it could even be a person, an individual in a university or a college.
Okay.
My foundation works there.
Hmm.
For me, the top 3% are the ones who really want to make it big in life. That is my 3%.
So, while there are young people who have that energy and passion to modify and enhance their life, and I'm sure you're getting people like me, for example, who have some prejudices, some background, some baggages. I always say baggages. And these are baggages which we are dragging on a beach, right? When you drag
Yes.
a sack which is tied to your hip, it drags you down. It doesn't drag you
Yes.
forward. Uh,
Yes.
how do you do, and specifically I'm talking for people like us, right? Not for the young folks, like to change their, like you said, one or two behaviors. It's not like you're changing the universe for them.
Uh,
You're not making them a different person. It's just modifying one or two behaviors. How do you do that when they have so much of prejudices, when they have so much of baggage? Because candidly, it's difficult. I work in a corporate setup. I do have peers. I do have people who work alongside with me, and they have these prejudices, and for them to change is a difficult task, or when I say change or modify certain behaviors which are required for the job or the corporate career. So how do you do that?
So anything that you approach in life, there has to be a sense of purpose.
Hmm.
If there's no sense of purpose, every activity becomes very futile and meaningless.
Yeah.
So whenever I target a behavioral modification, I do take people through an instrument which is mine, and I've tested it for a long, long time now, which takes you to a point where it identifies very clearly as to what is that journey in your professional career and your personal career that you would love to take. It's an alignment, and there is a TEDx talk of mine on authentic leadership.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying there is life takes you through various experiences. Those experiences have just not happened just for the sake of it. There is a deep meaning to it, the good and the bad both.
Yep.
They are playing a role in your life. They're a part of your blueprint, if I may say.
Mhm.
Now, these experiences obviously bring us to a point of a fork every time in life where we have to choose a path. Sometimes we pick up the right path, sometimes we don't pick up the right path. But ultimately, life itself is so profound and powerful that it does bring in a corrective action. And most of the times, it's not you're perfectly aligned to your life's purpose, but you're quite close to it.
Mhm.
Now, when you discover your sense of purpose, which means what is that one thing you would do even at the middle of the night if nobody wants to pay you?
Yeah.
That's your sense of purpose. Once you discover that sense of purpose, then the behavioral modifications become very easy. And then, interestingly, the baggages become meaningless because you may choose to take a tough call in your life. You know what? This sack on the beach is not helping me anymore because my sense of purpose is far ahead.
Yep.
And I don't want to carry this sack anymore with me. And have I seen people shed their sacks? Absolutely. Absolutely. And 100% have done that. Some do it easily, some take time, and some fight a battle with me. But that's a part of the game.
And this pandemic, so just switching gears a little bit, and I'm sure you would have seen that to manage, sustain, and scale and fight this storm, I would say, or embrace the storm. Either you fight it or you embrace it. Uh, there would be certain Like, since you have mentioned to me earlier that you are a researcher, what have you seen change happening in this pandemic in people's mind or aspects which you work with people right now?
One is a lot of knowledge and a lot of behaviors have become obsolete completely.
Hmm.
Look, since I'm a researcher and since I specialize in international business, I study the entire phenomena of what's happening in the international market. Let's understand. The history of economics says that every time there is a pandemic or every time there is a war,
Mhm.
there is a massive shift that the society goes through because it creates innovations.
Yeah.
After the Spanish flu, also, a lot of innovations happened.
Mhm.
Right. In fact, the industry went through a complete revamp after that.
Mhm.
So even this particular pandemic is no different. And pandemics do last multiple cycles for sure. And in those multiple cycles, after every wave, there is a shift that's coming. For instance, giving you a simple scenario that restaurants
Mhm.
suddenly saw nobody visiting them and cloud kitchens came into being, and those cloud kitchens actually started doing extremely well. In fact, a lot of restaurants moved into cloud kitchens,
Yep.
right? Home deliveries,
Mhm.
people started getting exquisite food at home,
Yep.
right? The same thing happened to consumer goods also.
Yep.
That whole experience of wanting to go to the store was no longer available to people. But there was enough cash available with people because they were no longer spending on stuff which was actually dead time and dead expenses.
Yep.
For instance, for me, typically, travel to office every day in a metro,
Mhm.
1.5 hours going, 1.5 hours coming back is dead time.
Yep.
It's absolute dead time. It's unproductive for organizations. But if organizations do not shift their thought processes and don't understand that this is actually a dead time, whereas people can actually, I can create an environment for people to work from home and they can be as effective working from home, because in any case, with the next change that's happening in the industry, and with 5G coming in, I'm doing some amount of research on behavioral sciences and quantum computing. And people will have to become friends with technology. It's no longer team building, it's no longer cohesivity within the teams. It's about humanization of technology. And if we don't learn how to work with technology, we have a problem.
Yep.
So the world on one side is coming up with innovations. On the other side, you have two thought processes. One thought process which does not understand that pandemic has created a shift, and the other thought process that says, yes, pandemic has created a shift. Now, if you are not current
Mhm.
with these scenarios of the market, you're not going to exist in any case.
Yeah.
It doesn't require any wise man to tell you that. It's very simple. We live in a world of cause and effect.
Yeah.
If you're not up to speed with the current times, you're over. So pandemic has created a major shift in the way people will use technology and will look at technology. In fact, I am very certain the whole idea of digital nomads has happened already. We were not aware of it. They were existing, but they were not existing in a way that people would recognize them as digital nomads. But they are digital nomads. I am a digital nomad.
Hmm.
I can work from anywhere. And with the technology that we have, we can run our offices from anywhere.
I agree. Like we
So
are doing
that's
the podcast right now
yeah,
from anywhere.
yeah. In fact, if you look at it, podcasts and the pandemic went together. I remember I go for my morning walks, which I call our idea walks.
Okay.
I was not podcasting.
Hmm.
But I suddenly realized that with this pandemic, I'm going to lose my connect with all the people that I have coached and all the people who want to know me. And what is the mechanism that I have now? And I just got a flash of thought during one of my morning walks and said, hey, you know what? I think all the questions and everything that I've done in coaching, I think I need to convert that into podcasts.
Hmm.
And the journey started. But interestingly, when we are now coming out of the pandemic,
Yeah.
because obviously it has to end one day, right?
Yeah.
In these times of pandemic, the kind of connect I have been able to establish with people purely because of the technology and audio and Clubhouse.
Mhm.
It's fascinating. In fact, it's going to help me a lot in my PhD now because now the digital community is set for me. And I'm doing my research in the area of VUCA, which is the volatile, uncertain,
Yep.
complex, and ambiguous world. I needed a digital community, which I already have now. I've used pandemic effectively for that.
Yep.
And people are also ready. So, pandemic, if you ask me, did come with certain catastrophic effects for sure. It hurt people bad. We've all lost somebody in a 1 degree connection for sure. But it has created a massive shift in the way businesses will operate.
Hmm. Going and taking you back into a time machine and putting you back 20, 25 years ago, when you left a job, corporate job, and like you said, you were sitting with the Vedic scholars and having that conversation. You know, while that was, I'm sure, overwhelming, fun, exciting, uh, the initial few years of in this new journey, and at that time, entrepreneurship in 2000s, the early 2000s, was unheard of, right? I don't know if you agree or if you come from a generation of.
Unheard of, my family was against it.
So, what were those initial hurdles, challenges, and especially coaching as a business or mentoring or behavioral sciences as a business was also not that heard of in India, especially. How,
No.
what was that initial few years for you?
So I think I need to go a little before
Okay.
that. Like I said, that the blueprint of life is very fascinating. So I'm a mechanical engineer and I come from a family of
Yeah.
engineers. So we are all engineers and everybody in my family are government servants. I'm the only guy who moved into private sector. And then obviously some more people in our family started moving into private sector. Now, I never worked in mechanical engineering ever.
Okay.
I always was fascinated with technology.
Mm.
And I moved into technology.
Okay.
And when I moved into technology, what happened was that at that point in time, Rajiv Gandhi, the then Prime Minister, had just about brought in computers into India, and I started doing box selling.
Mm.
Then I moved into wide area networking. I started consulting in the area of local area networking, wide area networking. Did a massive project with Konkan Railways also. And then gradually I moved into CAD CAM, and then I moved into computer education. Right. Now, what happened was I realized that I was not enjoying my work anymore. There was no creativity. Every time I used to go into my office, I used to wonder, what the hell am I doing in life? Then I came to a point in life where a shift occurred. Things just went horribly wrong for me.
Mm.
And at that point in time, life brought me to a point and said, so during my college days also, I was very clear that I would be an entrepreneur.
Mm.
But corporate corrupts you. They give you the perquisites, they give you everything that you need, and then you start delaying it, and you get into your safety zones, and then you start wondering, should I actually move into this whole idea of entrepreneurship? Even my electricity bill is being taken care of. Why should I do that? And I did come to that point. But life did drive me to a point where I had to take the call. And interestingly, I was exposed to behavioral sciences at that point in time because I was working with my team on certain areas of work as an operations guy, not as a behavioral scientist. But I got thoroughly impressed with the whole concept of behavioral sciences. And then I asked myself this question, end of that entire project. I said, if one thing I have learned in this project is that you must do what your heart tells you to do. Now is the time, or it'll never happen. I was 32 then, 31 plus. And I said, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And by the way, Carl Jung also makes a very interesting statement. Midlife crisis is extremely important for people. And life drives you to midlife crisis. And at that point in time, you make two choices. Either do what is a part of your sense of purpose or the calling of the heart, or you remain with what you're doing. And there's no quarrel on that. Both are okay. I chose to step out of the corporate life of mine because I got disgusted with the corporate politics. I got disgusted with the fact that everybody talks about ideas and innovations. But when it comes to practice of those ideas, practice of the change management processes, people chickened out then. Now people are different. And every time I used to do what I wanted to do, people used to say it's a wonderful idea, but we're not wanting to stake it. And I used to say, why? No, the risk is too high. Now I said, you called me in, you paid me a fat salary for doing this work, and now you're telling me don't
Yep.
do it. I might as well get onto an area where I can select my projects and work with people who really want to take my passion ahead. So I
Hmm.
quit. Things went bad.
Okay.
No money coming. I think one of the most dangerous aspects of moving from being a professional who's a salaried professional into entrepreneurship is we are used to a salary on the first of the month
Yep.
every month. That ceases. The mindset is different. Folks at home started getting worried. I was not being invited in family get togethers because there was no brand backing
Yep.
me up. And for most of the people, I was virtually sitting at home, but I was actually creating the foundation of success at that point in time. But since there was no success, people don't recognize that, right? Everybody bets on a winning horse
Yep.
only. So 3 years, nothing happened, Anis. Nothing happened. Every time I used to go for a meeting and present my ideas, the decision makers would always say, fantastic idea, we'll come back to you. Nobody ever came back. But then a series of coincidences started happening. It's very interesting. It's humorous actually. Every time I used to go for a meeting, I would not get the deal.
Okay.
But then they would come back to me and tell, you know what, that trainer has fallen ill. He's taken ill, and we've already booked the hotel, we booked the resort. Can you please come and conduct the training?
Okay.
And I went and did
Mhm.
it. My first 3-4 deals happened like that.
Okay.
Okay, my apologies to the trainer who fell ill because of me. Okay, but I can't do. I didn't have any role, right? But that's when my first few accounts came in, and I tell you, it's so surprising. They were the biggest of the brands that one would ever dream of working with. So much so that an Indian conglomerate called me, and I was supposed to be taking up a program on innovation there. And they said, no, we cannot do this because there are people in the organization who have objected because we already have a training center and they are the ones who are conducting this work. So we're sorry, we can't call you. The same thing happened. They declined to do the training because the trainer was not available. And I got it.
Okay.
So that's the way this whole journey happened. But I think my expression to everybody who wants to take on to the journey of entrepreneurship, 1,000 days.
Hmm.
You got to stick it out. It's an empirical number.
Yeah.
But a lot of entrepreneurs talk about it. And I was very happy. Once on a flight, I met up with a Gujarati businessman. And I was low at that point in time. Things were not happening for me. And he said, what happened? You're not looking too good. He was sitting next to me. And I said, yeah, I started my own business. I thought it was the calling of my heart, but things are not working out. He asked me, how many months have happened? I said, 15 months. Nothing has happened. He said, another 15 months. Then you will be on a roll.
Wow. Okay.
I just believed in that person because I felt I should believe in that person. Possibly he was an anchor for me. Possibly he gave me an input that I liked.
Yeah.
But that was a straw that I could hang on to. And I hung on to it, and I'm extremely grateful to that individual. We are not in touch. I don't know where he is. But I think that 1 hour, 50-minute flight from Pune to Delhi made all the difference.
Yeah, these moments come in, and individuals who come and touch you, they'll never be seen again or heard of again. Uh, some people may say it's a miracle. Some people may say it's luck. Some people may say it's destiny, that you just needed that straw which you hung on for the rest of your life.
But unfortunately, Anis, people don't spot the straws.
Yes.
The straws are so important in life to hold on to.
Yeah.
We look for a wall, we don't look for a straw. And I keep looking for straws because when you're trying to achieve something which is impossible, you have to look for those small things which you can hold on to. They create hope in you.
Your business is such that it is highly dependent on you. I would use that word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you think about scale, and how do you think about, taking it to the next level? Because if it's individually and people dependent, and now in the world of technology, right? Scale is a big question, and scale is a business which everybody wants to be in. How do you, be Niket and not be Niket, and be at Atyasa can scale on its own and not depend on Niket? So how do you balance that out?
You're right. in this business, the product is an individual. The service is also an individual, and the brand is also the individual. Atyasa may be a brand, but let's face it, 7-8 years I attempted to build Atyasa as a brand, but Niket always was ahead of Atyasa. And then when I got and I did my international business management, I realized that this is the peril of this business. That when there is an individual, that individual will always be a brand, and the company will always be a brand which will be different, but not as powerful as an individual. So I accepted that reality, number one. Number two, yes, a lot of people whom you used to meet used to tell me this, Niket, your model is not scalable. That's when I invested hugely in my education. You would have noticed on my LinkedIn profile, there are 25 different certifications from international universities. My post-graduation, my PhD now. Until and unless you invest in knowledge and you invest heavily in knowledge. For instance, I have stipulated 100 days a year minimum for my upgradation. And I invest heavily into it. Now, one is the knowledge. So you stay current. But number two is the technology. We're living in a world where if the business is based on an individual, the only way out is technology. I think once we get into quantum computing, we will talk about it as to how faculties and coaches will soon become immortal and they will become digitized. We will take that conversation, if you permit me, after some time. But in answer to what you're just saying, I was doing a course with Wharton on entrepreneurship, and we were supposed to come up with a business model. At that point in time, I own 3 companies. One company is into coaching and consulting, which is a private limited venture of Atyasa. So it's Atyasa Consulting Private Limited. Then there's Atyasa Consulting Foundation, which is working on women's empowerment, entrepreneurship in universities, design thinking in universities. We're doing that work. The third company is called Atyasa Global Alliances LLP, which was an international venture of mine, which is an international venture of mine. We were operating in Germany and we were operating in Bangladesh. We had a reversal. For various reasons. And I had to wind up operations. And the company was pivoted. And while I was doing my course with Wharton, I saw it was a great opportunity for me to come up with a business model that I could kick off as a part of my certification process. Now, I realized, I had also done design thinking by then. And I realized one strength that we had internally was we had created a whole lot of content. 2,000 hours of digital content.
Wow.
And I was also a mentor on Coursera. I knew how the business worked. I said, if the only way I can scale up my business now is to create an e-learning platform, which is only me. And when I was studying, all the other portals are typically, as of now, while this conversation is going on, are multi-university portals. There is no consultant in the world who has created a 2,000-hour content, and I am pretty upfront about it. There is nobody who has created a 2,000-hour content because it is a humongous work. I had a massive team that I had employed which was creating that content. It's an investment which is in millions. All I did was I looked for a portal where I could integrate the content. We integrated the content, 35 courses created, and I was also podcasting. But I hadn't started podcasting then, but I knew I would podcast some point in time. I got the prototype, the MVP, if you wish to say, if you will, the minimum viable product, and I submitted it for my certification. And it was a wow. It was appreciated by everybody who was there on the panel at that point in time. And, when it's an online course, there are people who are evaluating online. So it was primarily an online certification that I was doing with Wharton. And I said, well, if this has clicked, let me now convert this into a commercial business proposition. I got my certification. And then this was quite before pandemic, around 3 years before pandemic is when I had created the e-learning platform. There were no takers. Everybody was going for the university courses. Nobody wanted a consulting house to give a course. But there were some organizations that I was working with who were open to taking these courses under the blended methodology. So I used to coach, I used to teach, and I used to offer this alongside. And they were okay doing that. So it started from there. But when the pandemic set in, at that point in time, I mean, I've created courses which are the top of the line course could be emotional intelligence, design thinking, critical thinking, mentorship, leaders as coaches. Those are the top of the line courses. And each course is around 40 hours to 70 hours. And the lowest end course would be, presentation skill, communication skill. Now, we came up with a model during the pandemic. We started offering this portal as subscription model. 6,000, 7,000 rupees per person, all courses available. Now, can you imagine what did we do to the market? We brought in so much value.
Yeah.
There were so many years of consulting work and research that had gone in, which created this content, and the whole thing came in. It is a completely scalable model.
Yeah.
Now, for me, it's borderless. We are now appointing international affiliates.
Nice.
Operates on digital currency completely. I don't know who's consuming my product. My entire service is now productized. It's available in a digital form. People are watching me all over the world. People are doing our courses all over the world. And we don't know them. Isn't that a beautiful way to scale up?
Amazing way to scale up. And you mentioned about quantum computing and how coaches will become immortals. What's your perspective on that? That intrigued my attention. So go for it.
Okay. 5G is going to change the entire way education is. In fact, I have written a thesis on this. Okay. Now, in any case, students have got hooked on to the idea of online learning. Libraries also are now investing in online tools. So online is here. Now, interestingly, there are a lot of brilliant professors. They come into the classroom, they talk. And when they're talking, it's a simultaneous activity that's happening. And a lot of students are unable to grasp what they say. And as a teacher, I can say this with confidence that every time you have to repeat a concept, there is definitely a hurdle in repeating it because some people in the class have understood it, some people in the class have not understood it. Now, the digital content has the ability, you can rewind it and you can listen to it and hear it again. That's fascinating with the same intensity. That's one. But I'm not going to stop at that. There are some fascinating faculties all over the world. And if they can be digitally transported to various locations, and it is like a beamed down robo or a clone of a faculty, and that faculty through AI can operate real time. If we can do machine learning, I'm sure that can also be available there. That means Niket as an individual of whatever number of years of experience that Niket has been through, and if Niket can train up that clone of Niket, which is a digital clone of Niket, and that can be beamed across the world, and you start conducting classrooms and workshops, can you imagine what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I tell people, well, you believe it's sci-fi. It is not. Because if with 3D printing, we already started talking about printing human organs. This is absolutely a possibility. Currently, faculties are being beamed on different plasmas all over the world, and international classrooms, borderless classrooms are happening. But there will be a technology available where you won't need these plasmas. That means a faculty, you can choose the topic the faculty has to speak about, and then you source the faculty in a digital form for that 1 hour. The faculty builds, people learn, and you're done. And we at Atyasa are gearing up for that.
Very interesting.
That is why we built so much of a content. Because I have also noticed technology allows you migration. Now, if my 2,000 hours of content can get migrated into an AI model, we are done. Obviously, then the other parts of gaming is coming into education now, simulations are coming into education now. So that's definitely there for sure for people to do. But what I'm looking at is faculties becoming immortal. Because once they are digitized, The faculty will leave the planet, but that content will remain. The only hitch, the only glitch, you leave behind a digital footprint. So whatever you teach, you better be right about it.
Yeah. Earlier they would say, be careful in what you say because, but people would forget that nowadays, be careful because it can come and bite you in the future because it's never getting
It is good because that will also ensure people tell the truth.
Yeah, the authenticity.
Of course.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is so relevant that people, and today it has impacted many global leaders, right? That what they said and those past comes to, I would use that word, bite them in the future or the present because.
Oh, here the person is learning. And if you've given a wrong input to that person, the person is going to catch you. And it is a digital footprint. You can't deny that.
And today's generation.
On a television, you can say whatever you want and get away with it and say, oh, the context was different. I didn't mean that. Not here.
Yeah.
You can't do that here.
Yeah, no longer. And people are also, like we discussed, the behaviors have changed that they are not going to hold back. If they don't like it, if they don't believe or they don't recollect you saying that or you saying something else, people are open to go ahead and express that to anybody.
And management as a topic and leadership is very gray. Yeah. So you better have your researchers in place when you're converting that into a content.
Great. Niket, now this has been a very interesting conversation and, you've given some piece of advice to people who are looking to become entrepreneurs and all of that. But, like you said, the pandemic is not yet over. It's still going through.
No.
And many of us, including me, are looking to do those behavioral shifts, do those transitions in our life. And the word which you use, move to the different orbit. What is that one piece of advice will you share with the listeners?
Two things are mandatory now. Mm-hmm. You've got to be tech savvy.
Mm-hmm.
You can't live in a world without technology anymore. Mm-hmm. That's one. Second, knowledge is becoming obsolete every 3 days.
Okay.
A person will have to remain a student for life from now on. Because the new researches, the new models, the new frameworks have to be known. If you are wanting to be an entrepreneur, you are an entrepreneur, or you're a business leader, you can no longer say, oh, well, it worked in the past, so I'm sure it's going to work again. No. So techno savviness and knowledge, which is current, these two are extremely important. But I also think, given the research that I'm conducting right now, organizations will become very frugal. Mm-hmm. And as organizations become very frugal, the individuals, the professionals, will have to be extremely agile in their responses henceforth, because the world is going to be very unforgiving. Mm-hmm. Because when technology comes, speed also comes.
Yes.
And with organizations going frugal, inefficiencies will surface very fast. Therefore, one thing I'm noticing is, and that single one thing I'm noticing is, ownership and accountability is absolutely in demand now. Mm-hmm. Because now people who are not owning up their area of work, those inefficiencies are surfacing very easily because technology is creating that transparency. So techno-savvy, being a student for life, and ownership and accountability to what you do is very, very critical post-pandemic.
Very well said, Niket. And thank you for taking time out. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I've learned a lot personally. So thank you and keep doing what you're doing. I'm sure, the impact which you are having on people's life is profound.
Oh, yes. I think I have quite a lot of years left still. And
definitely.
I'm looking forward to my research now getting done on VUCA. And I think that is one big thing. I'm converting my entire work into a body of knowledge, which I want to give it away to the world. So when I leave this planet, there's a story that I leave behind. That's my whole idea now. Thank you so much, Anis.
There's a legacy. There's a legacy which you'll leave behind for sure.
And I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening in. And we close yet another episode of Masters Decoded. If you've enjoyed the episode, please, you can help us out by sharing it on social media. I would personally appreciate that. It's how we can reach more listeners, and the more listeners we have, the more awesome guests I can get in touch and convince to participate in these conversations that are a joy to have for me, and I hope they are a joy for you to listen as well. You can also help a lot leaving reviews on iTunes or your podcast service of choice. Reviews are surprisingly helpful in supporting the podcast to get to more listeners. If this episode has intrigued you, I would request you to subscribe to the podcast to stay up to date and get notified to the future episodes. With that, I bid you and see you in the next episode.